Hey, y'all, and welcome back to episode 4. And today I am not going to hold your hand when I say this, but that job is not a safety net. Now, with everything that's going on in our country, in the world, in our economy, child, there's a layoff every day, if not several layoffs. And we're not talking about itty bitty companies. We're talking about major Fortune 500 companies, companies that people have worked at for 10, 20, and 30 years. And they lived in this sense of what they thought was job security. And, they thought they were going to retire from some of these places. And every day in the news, on LinkedIn, you're seeing furloughs, you're seeing shutdowns. It's just been, honestly, a hot mess, okay? And it's not that the reality that a job truly does not create a true sense of security. That's not new information, but I think the space that we're in right now in this current era is really highlighting for people that that's the case. And I think as a millennial, we knew that a long time ago because when we came out of college in the early 2000s, we thought we were coming out into, amazing jobs. We were told all we had to do was go to college and get great educations and we were going to make all this money. And we all came out to mostly a bunch of debt and just still the same entry-level jobs. And not even entry-level corporate, but still we were doing intern type jobs. We were doing, fast food, retail type jobs. And that was not what we were promised. So I don't think millennials are as shocked, but a lot of people still are that, the worker economy, the wage earner economy is not all it's cracked up to be. Okay, that is not some kind of guaranteed ticket to financial security or knowing that you're going to get your white picket fence and your American dream. And I just think a lot more people need to come to grips with that and start coming up with a plan for what you're going to do with your life instead of sitting around waiting for somebody to come save you. Because that's just not the case. I mean, like I said, it's never been the case, but right now we're really seeing it that is not truly the state of the world that we're living in. And I think we have to ask ourselves, well, why does a job feel safe? Because it does, we all have a sense of a sigh of a relief. We celebrate people when they announce, oh, I got the job, whether it's in our friend groups or our family or right out of college or on LinkedIn. We definitely celebrate people oh my God, you got the job. Amazing. That's so cool. But why does a job feel so safe to us? And I think it's a sense of predictability. And that sense of predictability is on purpose, right? They make sure that you get paid on a schedule because it's certainly possible that they could have paid you your whole check up front, right? Like a contract. You could have got everything, in one lump sum, but that's not how it happens. They create a sense of structure and predictability and routine. And by creating that, it subconsciously makes us feel oh, this is safe. It's something that I can rely on. It's something that's going to be repeatable. And that's something that makes us feel good. It makes us feel okay, that works for me and I'm going to be all right. When the reality is this could change at any given time for a multitude of reasons, but we're not conditioned to think of a job like that because it bakes in that level of routine and predictability so that you don't freak out or you don't look at it, with a side eye and be well, truly this can change. And only people who work in the gig economy or people who work on commission or people who are self-employed truly understand the volatility of most income streams. But people who have a standard wage job for the first time in their entire life starting to realize that this is just the world. It's not special. This is how it's been going the whole time. But now all of a sudden it's kind of oh my gosh, this is so jarring. And we have this cultural conditioning around employment. And I think a big part of that reason is because we are mostly especially in our country, we are absolutely conditioned from a very young age to be workers instead of owners. We are not conditioned. We are not taught to be the boss. We're not taught to be in charge. We're not taught to be creators, innovators, owners, visionaries. We are taught to be worker bees. We are taught to fall in line. Think about when you were all the way back in elementary school. There's 25 kids in class where only one or two of them is necessarily promoted and taught to be a line leader or a line captain or the person who gets to watch the class when the teacher needs to run to the restroom or to the office right quick. But the rest of the 23 to 24 of y'all are taught to be the followers. You're taught to be the ones who, are being surveilled. You're taught to be the ones who be quiet and listen to the one that's in charge. You were taught that in first grade, right? So there's a cultural conditioning around doing what you're told, following in line. And if you do that, you will be safe and you will be comfortable. And that's just, how it's going to be. So this sense of familiarity is baked into us at a super young age. And we don't understand how to break out of that necessarily when we get older, or to even see that it's a pattern that we were conditioned for, and not that it's truly how things are in the real world, that somebody was benefiting from teaching us to behave that way. And I'm not even saying that to say that everyone should be a boss or everybody should be an entrepreneur or everybody should be a business owner, because that's not true. Everybody doesn't have that motivation. Everybody doesn't want to be in charge. Everybody doesn't have the skill set necessarily. And also that old saying when we were kids, too many chiefs, not enough Indians type thing. Sure, we don't need everybody to try to be the boss and or be in charge, because we wouldn't get things done. But we do need collaboration. We do need honesty. And we do need to all know what's going on. We don't need to just blindly follow anyone and not understand when maybe there's a motive that's underneath what's going on. And I just believe that that's why a job feels safe to people, even though anything can happen. You can be fired. You can be laid off. You can be furloughed. The businesses can close. The economy can shut down. Anything can happen at any given time. God forbid something could happen to you or you can't continue to go to work. All these things have always been the case. That's not, again, new information, but we like to put the blinders on and act like those things aren't real, because this sense of security is, more comforting for us. And it takes me into this conversation about employment is truly just rented stability. It's not real. Obviously, we should be interviewing the company as well as them interviewing us when we are looking for a job, because it's just rented stability. So we should be looking at what is this company's track record? How often do they lay people off? Have they ever laid people off? What do they look like in terms of how much money they have and things like that? Do they cover their payroll? Is it a startup? Is it a long-held company? Things like that. How do they behave, when bad things happen? When the economy has tanked in the past, did they lay a bunch of people off? Or, how did the company treat that situation? Certain stuff like that, because this illusion of permanence is what you have to break your mind out of. That gone are the days of working these jobs some of our grandparents and great-grandparents may have been I worked at this manufacturing plant or, this industrial place for 30 years, 40 years. I retired there after 50 years. We do not exist in that kind of time. We live in a time of constant innovation, constant change, and constant ideation, where the people who are in charge are always trying to make things cheaper, faster, and more lucrative for themselves. And because of that, you don't have the privilege to just sit around and assume that you are going to be able to work somewhere for 5 decades and just sit on your laurels and pretend you are going to be there for the rest of your life just because you want to be and you don't cause any problems and you show up on time all the time. That is an absolute illusion. And then also we got to remember that at-will employment is a thing. Now, everybody lives in different states, and some people have contract law and stuff like that, and we won't get into that. That's not what this podcast is about. But most places have at-will employment. And that literally means that an employer can dismiss you for any reason, any freaking reason. And that doesn't mean you did anything wrong. It doesn't mean that you're not good at your job anymore. It could just mean that that's just not what makes sense for them anymore. That's why people get laid off all the time, because And I know we like to get upset because like, oh, well, the CEO of this company, like they still got a bonus and blah, blah, blah. But then all these people got laid off because they don't have to have a good reason. They don't have to have a moral reason for letting you off. It is at will. So whatever, fits their bottom line, that's a good enough reason for them. And that is fully lawful. So I just think people need to remember that, like, just because you think you work at a good company or you have a good job, you know what I'm saying? Like, that doesn't mean, honestly, anything. Like, you need to be taking those situations and those opportunities for what they are. How do they serve you? How do they enhance either your career, your finances, your lifestyle for now and into the future? And you should be dealing with them accordingly. Okay? It should be a mutually beneficial situation between you and your employer. It shouldn't just be that, like, you're just so thirsty and you're just so grateful to be there. Oh, thank you, massa. Like, no. You should be getting something out of it. And honestly, not really just the paycheck. To be honest, like, that's just basic, math. I show up, you give me money. But I could rant about that for a while. And I think we have to, like, wake up and stop treating these, like, layoffs as, like, anomalies. And, like, oh my God, like, I can't believe that such and such got laid off, or I can't believe, bro, I'm only 40, which means I've only been in the post-college, like, labor force for less than 2 decades. And I have been laid off, like, legitimately laid off due to downsizing, business closings, all kinds of things, at least like 5 times in my career. And I didn't do anything wrong. I did all the things. I followed the rules. Like, I have a degree in finance. I'm hella good at my job. And I have advanced certificates and all that kind of stuff that people tell you to do. It doesn't matter, bro. Like, these people will still let you go. Like, you're still just a human asset. Like, your talent is just helping them further along their agenda. And that's what a job is supposed to be. So I'm not saying it in a bad way necessarily, but, like, that's the whole point of a job. And you're just there to further their agenda. When they feel like either their agenda has been accomplished or they feel like they can no longer afford to push forward that agenda, then it's time for you to go. Okay? It's time for you to go. And you're costing too much, it's time for you to go. They don't care that you've been there 100 years. They don't care that you got kids. They don't care that your mama's sick. They don't care about your FMLA. They don't care about your pension. They don't care about your 401k. It's time for you to go. Okay? So I think we need to make sure that we understand that layoffs are a feature of employment, not an outlier anomaly of employment. They are a feature, not an anomaly. Okay? So that's important. And then I think it's also important to, like, call out the folks who really talk about, like, the whole good job, bad job. A job is a job. And good jobs absolutely still collapse overnight. Good companies absolutely still collapse overnight. People with 6 figures, people with advanced degrees, people with great compensation plans still wake up that morning and have that conversation with HR. Okay? So I just think it's important that, like, we need to just acknowledge that none of those things, all that stuff is a fallacy that we have been sold. And it's okay if you believed it, because many of us did, but it's time to wake up. We're not children. Like, it's time to wake up and be like, okay, so what am I going to do from here? Because somebody been playing hard in my face for the majority, if not all of my career, or even my education that I went after to get the career, and I need to make a change with the way that I interact with these companies, with the way that I move forward. If I'm going to launch something for myself, am I going to be an entrepreneur? Am I going to start my own thing? Am I going to do both? Because there's nothing inherently safe about choosing to work for somebody else. There really isn't. And it's important to just, like, wake up and acknowledge that that's the truth. And as a finance girly myself, I'll say, just succinctly, that income does not equal security. Income does not equal security. I sound like Dr. Umar. I'm not going to say it a third time. But what actually does equal security, when you have access to some form of wealth or some form of income, is your ability to save, skills, flexibility, things like that, adaptability. Those are the real buffers. That is the sauce. And those things you own. The employer don't own that. Your skills that you learned, the things that you know how to do, what you bring to the table, That's you. You take that from employer to employer to employer. You're selling your skills, okay? You are a mercenary for hire, okay? That's really where the sauce is. That's where the security is in making sure that you have something that is marketable. You have something that people want. You got something that people want to rent. Because remember, like I said, it's employment is rented security. It's rented stability for a period. And what you're doing to secure that is leveraging your skills, leveraging your abilities, leveraging the way you think, what you can do, etc. So those are going to be the real buffers. And I think I want to also get around like some of that like old school financial advice. And this is not financial advice, okay? But I know we're told stuff like, oh, you need 3 months of savings. Baby girl, people have been unemployed for a year in this economy. That's not going to get it. 6 months of savings. That's cute. That's helpful. It'll make your nervous system calm down a little bit, so you're not freaking the freak out. But that's not enough. That doesn't fix the fact that you have a innate dependency on these people. Like, it hasn't changed anything. And honestly, getting the next job won't change that you have dependency. You still haven't necessarily created security. You put a Band-Aid on a bullet wound, okay? You need to rethink how you want to move so that you're putting yourself in a position to not be dependent on every whim that, happens in the world. And again, this is not financial advice. So that doesn't mean that, you should start a business, but maybe you should. Or maybe you should have a side hustle. Maybe you should have some investments. Like, you should, at the very least, if you take anything from what I'm saying, it's like diversify yourself. Because a job is not a safety net. It's not. They're not here to save you, and they're absolutely not here to make you rich. So you need to be looking at these situations like, dang, how can I look at this differently? Like, how can I approach this situation differently next time? Because you're right, it didn't work for me. Like, I used up all my savings. I got laid off, and then I used up all my savings, and then I was looking crazy, and I did everything quote unquote right. Exactly. And we just want to move differently than that. So, and we could talk about like why people defend jobs that actively harm them. Like, you hate that job, you hate your boss, you hate the company, they do you dirty, they underpay you, you don't have no benefits, they cut back on the good things and they added bad things. But people will continue to defend them because they feel like these people, like, I don't know, are benevolent in some kind of way. And those people will drop you like a bad habit. Like, as soon as you no longer are relevant to them. Like I said, we're talking about the whole point of employment is you are leveraging your skills or your ability or your presence or your labor to further somebody else's agenda. So as soon as that is not the case, they will let you go. And it doesn't matter like where that is. It could be a government job. It can be a corporate job, a public sector job, private sector job, nonprofits. As soon as you cease to serve the agenda of the organization, it's going to be over. So I don't want to just keep beating that dead horse, but that's the truth. And I think it's a good time to maybe bring in the conversation around like self-employment, because so many people have a hard time like leaning into doing their own thing, becoming self-employed, being entrepreneurial, starting their own thing, because they think it's like reckless, or it's like, oh, it's irresponsible, or I have kids, or I'll just wait until my kids grow up, and things like that. And I guess I want to challenge that. I'm not saying that you should quit your job if you have one, because this economy, but I'm saying you should reevaluate the way you look at things based on everything we've already discussed, right? But the reality is, you need to learn to bet on yourself the way you're comfortable betting on these companies, because of all the reasons we discussed. At will employment, they'll let you go, okay? At the very least, hopefully you won't let yourself go. And you need to learn to bet on yourself the way you are willing to bet on these companies. The risk is essentially the same, but we ask so much more of ourselves. For example, Many of us will say things like, man, if I had like 6 months of my rent, 6 months of my expenses, a year of my expenses saved, then I'll quit my job and I'll start my thing. I would start my business. I would start my podcast. It's easy for somebody to say who got money. Well, it's not easy for them to say, because here's the thing. When was the last time you went to a job interview and you made them front you 6 to 12 months of your paycheck before you came to work on the first day? I'll wait. Because you didn't. Okay, because you didn't. You didn't. Because you put your trust in those people. You don't know them people, but you put your trust in those people. You let them people have you buy a uniform, buy shoes, an outfit, borrow money from somebody for gas or public transportation, money for lunch, to get your hair done, your uniform, your outfit you needed to put on because you ain't had no work clothes, child care. You borrowed against money that they promised you. And then I'm going to ask how many of y'all was working hourly and they cut the hours they promised you. Huh? Listen, y'all done got me amped up. But you didn't ask them people to front you 6 months of money, 12 months of money before you did any of that. Or before you showed up on day one hungry with no money in your pocket. You know why? Because they promised you. They said they was gonna. But that's a risk, ain't it? It's a risk that they wasn't going to cut those hours. It's a risk that the company wasn't going to close. It's a risk that they weren't going to lay you off. It's a risk that the company wasn't going to fold. It's a risk you was going to make it through your 90-day probation. But you took the risk on people you don't even know. And you weren't willing to take the risk on yourself, buddy? Come on, y'all. This is what I'm saying. We have learned to be followers instead of leaders. We have learned to be workers instead of bosses or builders or creators, or visionaries, any of those things. We have been conditioned from a long time ago to be that. Instead of betting on ourselves, betting on our own skills, abilities, ideas, creativity, the people around us who will help us. Your autonomy is treated as dangerous because you were conditioned to believe it is. Because it benefits people for you to stay small, for you to stay scared, for you to be shook about stepping out on your own. And again, I'm not telling nobody, don't come at me, okay, to quit their job if you have one. But I'm telling you to rethink the way that you look at that job, especially in the year of our Lord 2026, okay? Ain't nothing about it secure. Ain't nothing about it stable. Ain't nothing about it safe. Nothing's promised. So really just pay attention to that. Like, think about how that makes you feel. Think about if that's something that you feel like you could do better, if you could make more money and how could maybe you take a little bit of that thought and like how could you implement that to bet on you just a little bit more. That's all. I'm not saying do nothing drastic. I'm not saying be irresponsible. I'm not saying put yourself out there on the line. But what I am saying is to decolonize your brain, right, away from being an automatic follower, okay, being an automatic worker if that's not who you are. Now, for some people, that's just who they are and they're comfortable. And I don't want nobody to be uncomfortable if that's not, you know what I'm saying? But if that's not who you are, then, and you know it's not, but you've been pushing yourself in that space, reconsider. Look at the stats. You don't got to believe me. The proof is in the pudding. Layoffs every day. Unemployment rate high. So there's nothing inherently safe about betting on somebody else instead of betting on you. That's the core thing, okay? I tell you that because I love you. That's it. I'm going to holler at y'all next time. Y'all have a good week. Deuces.